There are other aspects of early medieval samurai culture that are important besides their family lives. The samurai were certainly warriors. They had to be. They were head crackers, sure, but right from the start, it was clear that there was a side to samurai culture that valued learning, that valued art, that valued religious expression. Because, frankly, they're human beings. That's what we all do. None of us are just, muscles on spines. We all have brains. And certainly our arts do reflect our situation in life, our upbringing, and in the case of the samurai, the early samurai, their artistic expression was in many ways channeled by the world around them. Not surprisingly, martial arts were very important to the early samurai. Here is a depiction of one of the most important during this period, Yabusame. It's horse archery. It's kind of a mix between target practice and a Western style joust. In some ways, you have an archer that is galloping along a length of track with 3 targets set up. As he passes, he's supposed to hit these from horseback, and you have 3 arrows to do this, so it's really no mean feat. The first Kamakura shogun, goodness, I'm sorry, I don't usually blank on the names of this person, Minamoto Yoritomo, a very important person. After he gained power, after he became shogun, had a review of his troops once, and he said, "My goodness, my warriors are going soft now that we've won. You all should really practice horse archery all the time." And everyone said, "Yes, shogun, we will do that." And even without his influence, this would have been something that the samurai would have been drawn to. Certainly, it reflects the way that they fought. You had those lovely depictions of samurai warfare in the Friday piece. You're going to see how this week you're going to look at 2 picture scrolls. The importance of horse archery in samurai warfare is very great, whether it is open battle on a field or a beach, or whether it's a urban ambush where people on horseback gallop up to the walls of compounds, throw in burning embers, shoot at defenders trying to beat out the flames, and then kill survivors as they escape. Very important part of samurai warfare, and so it becomes an important part of samurai art. It has survived to this day. Yabusame has, in some ways, in very interesting forms. One of my favorite examples of this is Fuji Television had a smash hit on their hands with Iron Chef, and they were doing all sorts of specials, Iron Chef specials, and one of these was to have a giant wheel along a beach, a set of 3 giant wheels with different ingredients on them, and this guy galloped by them doing Yabusame, and basically where his arrow hit on the spinning wheel depended on, basically decided what secret ingredient the chefs were going to be using, but everybody knows about this. There's other martial arts as well, but archery was certainly viewed as more important than swordsmanship at this point in time. The primary weapon of the samurai was the bow and arrow, and the martial arts of the early medieval period do tend to reflect that. But martial arts were not the only method of artistic expression that the samurai had available to them. Certainly religious sponsorship was very important. We see here one of the most well-known examples of samurai sponsorship of religious art. This is the great Buddha of Kamakura, of course the capital of the Kamakura shogunate. It is actually in a temple that is on top of a very large hill, really a minor mountain. There's a set of steps that you can't see which extends down to the bottom, and this used to be actually in a temple, used to be surrounded by a building There was once a tsunami, though, and the water came all the way up the temple, and all the way up the mountain, completely destroyed the temple. But the Buddha is said to have rocked back, then settled forward, and continued meditating as if nothing had happened. A great landmark in Kamakura and in all of Japan. You can actually get inside of this Buddha. I have been inside. It's really, I mean, it's interesting because you can do it. It's not like it's, it's not like going on top of a Tokyo Tower or anything like that, but it was kind of seen as a symbol of power, a symbol of devotion, certainly, but also a real statement of the importance of religion in the lives of samurai. And why not? Because the samurai deal with death quite a lot. And as such, they had perhaps a heightened awareness of their mortality. Certainly all of us know that we're mortal, but perhaps somebody who is literally who can be killed or who can kill someone else at any time has to worry about the state of his soul. Now, Buddhism is a certainly well-established religion in Japan, and had been so for a few hundred years. As we've seen, it was brought over during the Asuka period, when a whole bunch of other Chinese stuff, or Buddhism was at least routed through China. But the samurai really made Buddhism a central element of their world outlook. Let's understand why that might be, right? So why would you be worried about the state of your soul, or what happens after you die, and why would Buddhism have an answer for you? Well, it's because of, I believe, of what Buddhism is, exactly. It is certainly a religion. It is often misrepresented as an ethical system, but not really a religion. That's not true. It is a religion. It does talk about what happens after you die. There are gods in Buddhism. There is the supernatural, certainly. And this religion is basically concerned about the nature of suffering. Very important to the samurai. Right. But let's start from the start. What is it? How did it start to happen? How did it become a thing? It started in northern India, actually on the border region between India and today's India and Nepal. And a real person, Siddhartha Gautama, who was the original Buddha, actually did live. There is somebody who we can identify as the Buddha. Traditionally, the dates of his life are given as 563 to 483 BCE, and this guy was a prince. Siddhartha was. Life was very good for him. He had parents who loved him. He was generally happy, and he lived a charmed life in a walled compound on his family's estate. And there are several versions of how he went from this carefree, really callow but good-natured youth to somebody who became deeply obsessed with the notion of suffering and how to end it. The first version, or one of these versions anyway, is that he was playing in his compound, and he heard the sound of crying, of misery, of wailing coming from across the wall. He climbed a tree, and he looked out, and he saw that outside of his compound there was a procession moving forward where some people were crying, and they were kind of carrying an object behind them. And he was really confused, and he went to his parents, and his parents, they loved him, they wanted to protect him, but they didn't want to lie to him, and so they told him, well, son, what you saw is a funeral procession. People die. And that is something that awakened him to the nature of suffering. There's another story about this, about how this happened. According to this other story, his parents decided that he really should be married, and they found a bride for him, and him and his bride seemed to really get along, and they were happy. And then one night, they're in their bedroom, she's asleep, and he looks over at her, and there's this beautiful moonlight falling on her face, and he notices that she's drooling. This is said to be something that kind of awakens him to the imperfections of life. This person goes on a religious quest because he really finds out that there is kind of it doesn't seem to be an obvious way to escape the cycle of suffering that life is. Now, what does he mean by that exactly? Yes, death is suffering, certainly in that first story, sure. Or in the second story with his wife, something ruining a perfect experience, sure. But why should that really matter that much? Why should death be so scary? Why should we be attached to things that are, well, let me give you an example. You're having a great day. You got a great grade on some assignment, some important assignment, I don't know, you found a bunch of money or whatever, or you can just sleep in, you got a new car or whatever, and you think to yourself, boy, I wish this could last forever. And there's the trap. Because of course it can't last forever. Because you're always going to be wanting more. You're going to be attached to chasing that high of having things how you like them. And things always change. And the Buddha realized this. According to the Buddha, there are Four Noble Truths, and this is at the heart of Buddhism. First of all, yeah, life is suffering, absolutely, for the reasons that we've just explored. That the cause of suffering is attachment and desire. That's truth number 2. But there is a way to end suffering. There's a way to end attachment. And you do this by following what Buddha called the Eightfold Path, which, to make a long story short, is basically a way of living that teaches you to let go, to enjoy things as they come, to not go after chasing after ephemeral pleasures, to accept the good, to accept the bad, and if you can, to become a monk and to achieve a life of holiness by doing certain religious practices of fasting, giving away all of your possessions, if possible. If not, just try to live a good life as much as you can. If you achieve enlightenment, if you achieve nirvana, by cultivating yourself, you can break the circle of suffering because you will not be reincarnated. You will become a Buddha and you will stop being reincarnated, which is what they thought that would happen. Just happened to people regularly. You came back, you were subject to the same desires, the same temptations to attachment, to suffering, or you can become enlightened and get out of this. And Buddhism became a very influential religion all over East Asia in its relationship with governments and with societies in China and Southeast Asia is fascinating, certainly in Korea as well. As we have seen in Japan, Buddhism was initially brought in by the court, and so was kind of a religion of the elite. But during the Heian period, and especially during the late Heian period, Buddhism was thought to be it is believed that Buddhism made inroads into wider society, into commoners, and certainly into the society of samurai, who became very concerned with the state of their soul, as we've seen from the Testament of Master Gokurakuji document that you have for this week. People endowed Buddhist monasteries, people took Buddhist vows, samurai did, and this was a major part of their cultural landscape, to be sure.